Hello and welcome to Construction Week's first panel discussion, where we will talk about all things instrumental to the region's built environment. I'm going to take this moment to wish all our female viewers a very happy International Women's Day. Now, diversity and inclusion is a topic that we at Construction Week choose to amplify every chance we get and across platforms. And we have broken ground on this, if I may say so, with a lovely panel of members from the boardroom and to the side. And while we are capturing gender diversity, what we are also intending to highlight is generational diversity and the convergence of different elements, all then forming the built environment. And you'll find out how in just a minute. Now, to kickstart today's panel, I'm joined by Kathleen McGrail, Managing Director Advisory Services at WSP Middle East. Also, Catherine Workman, Partner and Head of Middle East at Pinsent Masons, Gosia Baron, Associate Principal at CallisonRTKL, Vanja Dimitrijevic, Senior Structural Engineer at WME, and Bushra Anwar, who is at Cundall, the Associate Electrical Services. So let's start off with having you all sort of go over the growth opportunities within your sector and how are you furthering these in your capacities. Kathleen, let's start with you.
Okay, thank you, Disha. I think I'd like to focus primarily on sort of diversity and inclusion, as that's the theme of today. I'm very fortunate to work for an organisation that really embraces diversity, inclusion, and of course gender balance. Not only do we have a number of networks, for example, the Women in Professional Services Network, a gender balance steering group, but various other different tools within the organisation that really does promote this. In fact, even some policies around gender neutral language and inclusion, which I think does actually make a real difference because it then becomes very much embedded and embraced in our culture. But on a personal level, I'd probably like to touch on a little bit more around my understanding of how to really drive diversity and inclusion. And that all comes down to seeing an individual as unique, but also allowing the flexibility for individuals to incorporate their home life and their work life in the right balance. And I think what I really mean to say here is that every individual has their own specific characteristics that they want to incorporate in their home life. So it's not always the female who is the primary caregiver. It could very well be, for example, one of my recent young graduates spoke to me about how she wants to do an MBA soon, even though she's already doing another diploma. So very, very often people have things in their home lives like sport or maybe elderly caregiver parents, for example, that they need to focus on. So allowing that flexibility to occur is really, really important. And that's all about working with line managers and encouraging them to look at the individual as very much as unique and also allowing that flexibility within the home and the workplace. And I'm very pleased to say that WSP actually did really drive the working from home even before COVID happened. So I'm very pleased to be within that organisation that really does promote that.
Wonderful. Now, moving on to you, Catherine, what's kind of your current agenda for Pinsent Masons and how are you furthering these growth opportunities?
Yeah, I'm going to take a slightly different tack. So the one thing that we're focusing on at the moment is something called the Mindful Business Charter. So this is something that we set up with Barclays Bank and another law firm, actually, Adol Shaw's in the UK, and it's since been rolled out. We've rolled it out in Hong Kong, Singapore, Australia, and we're going to do it here. But what it really means is removing unnecessary stress and promoting well-being and mental health within the workplace, which is hugely important. And we've probably found in the last 12 months just how important that is. If anybody receives an email from me, they might see right at the bottom in blue writing, Pinsent Masons supports agile working. Please do not feel free to respond to this email outside your working hours. Not everybody, there's such pressure to feel on all the time. So acknowledging some of that stress, because that's one of the biggest stresses of constantly checking your phone and emails, and just looking how we might as businesses, and I think we as businesses have a great responsibility to focus in on mental health and well-being. And it's that unnecessary stress. I mean, we as lawyers know long hours and stressful hours, and I'm sure all of us do here, it is a constant theme of our life, but it doesn't always have to be. Yes, it will sometimes, but sometimes not. So we would be super keen to, so if anybody's interested in hearing a bit more, we'd be keen to be partnering up with as many people so that we can look after our own staff, but look after other people's staff, i.e. look after each other.
It's quite interesting. So diversity and mental health awareness. Gosia, how are things at CallisonRTKL? What are the kind of opportunities that you've observed and are pursuing?
So at CallisonRTKL, we very much focus on a kind of cultural collaboration that is kind of spanning across all the offices. So getting that the empowerment and encouragement from the senior leaders across many offices is really what gives us the strength that is needed in order to fight some of the biases of the diversity that we face in Middle East. So really kind of working with the senior female members globally to make sure that we get the required support, that we reach out to those role models, that they encourage us and really give us that empowerment that get us going. Obviously, we know that specifically in the pandemic, there are some challenges that some of the researchers are showing that 1 in 4 female in the region are looking to give up their jobs because of the impact of COVID-19. So I think specifically now it is very important that we really reach out to those who have the experience and who could act as role models for our females in the Middle East to create that support mechanism. And I also want to mention that it is very important that we engage our male colleagues in that effort, because if we just keep it to kind of between the girls, I don't think it has the impact that is required. So really reaching out, making sure that we have the support from male peers to encourage that change and drive that change.
Great point about involving male peers as well there. Now, this was, of course, more of a boardroom perspective. Let's shift to the other side of the panel and get a more technical and on-site perspective. Vanja, let's start with you. How would you say that your role has sort of transformed, and your sector rather has also transformed over the past 4 or 5 years? What's it been like? How have on-site functions changed?
Well, I'm someone who comes from a design background mostly, but so far I had an opportunity to spend actually quite a bit of time on site here in UAE, and this was quite new for me. And I have to be honest, and myself, before taking up this task, I think I also had some unconscious bias. I was worried, how is it going to be okay? How is it going to work out? Because this story is always there. You can hear about it. That there is unconscious bias. That there is not enough women on site. But I really have to say that it was a positive experience for me. I've grown a lot. I've learned a lot, and I really have to compliment my male colleagues. I really had a lot of support. I went to a site as someone who was supposed to provide design support for site supervision for one of the projects. I worked as a design engineer for Expo, UAE Pavilion, and I think I raised my concerns whenever I had them, and they were heard. And my male colleagues or my female colleagues, they were all very cooperative. So. What I'm trying to say is I really think there is a positive shift, and there is an awareness, and it's becoming more and more common for women to take up these roles. But we're not there yet, completely. We still need to talk about it, and this is an amazing opportunity actually, this panel talk. We really need to keep talking about it. It's all about. There is not a good guy or bad guy in this story. It's all about the unconscious bias, which is embedded in our minds. It's also it's embedded in both male and female. We just need to sort of make a shift away from that. And actually, it can be very easy. My site experience taught me that.
Right. The unconscious bias, like you said, and maybe the prevalent conditioning as well, that's kind of led us to just sort of also feed into this narrative. Now, I'll move to you, Bushra. You have been with Cundall for about 4 to 5 years now. How has your role sort of transformed? Are you on site more now?
Actually, same as Vanja, I've always been in the consultancy field, so a designer to begin with, but then we do have the site supervision role. So I would say, it's a kind of ongoing process. So you do the design, then you follow it up on site. So I think change-wise, I guess last year was kind of, of the COVID situation. So we saw a lot of movement in that area. Like, you're not allowed to go to site. So that maybe taught us to think in a bit more different way. As a company, I think we've started looking at digital engineering, like AI, because we have so much data now. So you can implement that, analyze that. So there's a sector that we've started looking into that, so making it much more easier. So you don't probably need to go to site that often, not in that way, but it will give you that insight, to go into AI, digital engineering. So that's something in Cundall we have started looking at, kind of pushing towards that. So I feel the next years coming, it will be quite different in that way. We have to think of a different way of working, like working from home, but then, because even working from home, I found, in the beginning, we were having a conversation like how we thought we will never be able to manage. But we are, as human beings, are very adaptable. So we made it work, and then now we need to find the tools to maybe make it more efficient. So it will be, I feel that it's a positive change which is coming, and it will make us think in a different way, in a different direction. Sorry, I kind of put it in a completely different technical way.
Kathleen, I'm going to move over to you now. You have obviously been very active in the PPP space. You've obviously, acted for government bodies, consortia, operators, and lenders. Do you want to tell me a bit more about how your role and your sector has transformed over the years, and maybe where the Middle East stands as a PPP market today?
Sure, thank you. Well, I'll read very active for veteran in that category. So I've been doing PPP for 27 years. So yes, a long time. And so clearly in that time, my role has changed. So I've gone from one of the most junior members on the team to leading teams for large pieces of infrastructure all around the world, sometimes in the forefront of doing brand new things, drafting legislation or drafting standard forms for governments. And I suppose my journey has then moved from that into a little bit more on the thought leadership space. So I was very lucky last year or the end of the year before to moderate some sessions of the G20, the infrastructure symposium in Riyadh, also in Saudi, which is quite an interesting thing. I moderated some sessions for the Global Aviation Summit. And I also was on a panel at the Global Infrastructure Forum at the World Bank IMF meeting. So I have more from being that little baby, new, shiny lawyer on a team to doing that. And I suppose for me, that's been really interesting and intellectually stimulating. Would I have thought 27 years ago that I would still love my job? The answer would probably be no. There's just no way I'd still be doing it, but I do, and I do love my job. So I've been very fortunate in the way that's morphed. As for the PPP market here, I hope so, because that's what I've come to do. But it's been very prevalent in the power sector to date. But I think there is huge opportunities in social infrastructure and economic infrastructure, so transport. Across the region, most of the GCC have got laws or draft laws on the books for PPP. So yeah, huge scope. I'm really excited, actually.
Wonderful. Now, Kathleen, you, of course, are new to WSP Middle East, but what's also new is the Advisory Services Business Unit. Now, do you want to tell us a bit more about the business, and why has WSP Middle East identified this as a core growth area now? How are you planning to take this forward?
Yeah, I'd love to talk about this. Obviously, this is my passion at the moment. So yes, I have just joined WSP. I'm on month 2 now, so all quite exciting. But I've actually been in the region for 10 years. And I've had the benefit of probably a rather long time looking at strategic advisory services for a number of different organisations in the Middle East and of course in the UK previously. So why now? Well, I'd say we're in very exciting and very challenging times at the moment, and our clients are pushing for things to happen faster and also on a much bigger scale, and they really, really want very, very good quality advice. So by stepping more into the strategic advisory space, we're allowing ourselves to help clients much more at the front end when they've got key strategic decisions to make. Very recently, I was looking with a client at actually bringing forward about 15 new transportation modes. So this is really exciting. And when you look globally, this sort of thing only happens very occasionally and maybe one mode of transport at a time. So we're really seeing clients making huge leaps. But in order to make these leaps, we have to make sure that up front that we really help them with their strategic plans. Are they doing the right things? Making sure we're doing the right feasibility studies with them. So it's quite exciting to be at the forefront of this, and very much looking forward to sort of taking WSP into the next stage. We have a very, very large global advisory. So I have the benefit on pulling on some very, very talented people and some great capabilities. And it's my role now to really find out what's going to fit in the Middle East and what's going to work well for our clients in the region.
That's very interesting. Now, Gosia, I'll move on to you. You, of course, specialize in urban design, placemaking, and master planning. How has your sector and your role sort of transformed over the past, say, 4 or 5 years?
I have been in kind of living and working in Middle East since 2013, so it's been 8 years now. And before that, even from the UK, I was very much focused on Middle Eastern projects as well. And later on, I realized that you really need to be here, really need to feel the pressure and everyday kind of client expectations to be really kind of able to participate in the process. So it felt naturally that I should be moving here. And I really don't have any regrets because it has been a great couple of years for me professionally. What I noted is that the further I went through my career, I had a need to approach projects with much wider lenses. Building on what Kathleen said, really kind of providing that advisory services to the client is something that I felt was very kind of aligned with my personal and professional growth. And what we saw is that there was really that need. So rather than focusing on the architecture of individual buildings, we looked much wider. I'm qualified as an architect. However, throughout my career, I felt that stepping into the urban design role and that master planning role, the strategic kind of perspective on the project was very important. And it was very much aligned with the client needs in the Middle East. And I think as a company, we also took that approach and also kind of looking into bridging various disciplines to make sure that we provide a bit of both. So while we're looking at the project at the macro scale, at the same time, we're giving the client glimpses of resolutions that they can very much identify themselves with. So at the building level, at the public realm level, the importance of placemaking and public realm came to the picture as well. So really making sure that we look at the project holistically. You also mentioned the importance of providing that advisory roles to the client. This, I felt, was also something that we felt we need to respond to. So making sure that we expand the envelope of our services, so taking it from the very kind of high-level, early visionary kind of stages, all the way to implementation, staying with the client, providing that support with the planning stages of the project, the approvals. So that custodian role in the master plan is something that we also very much engaged with. I was lucky enough to be the director of the Dubai Creek Harbour, and it has been 5 years on the project. We very much keep going. So those are the kind of services where we're expanding our expertise at the moment.